So hi, I'm Nick. I've been with Hive for a number of years. How many of you were at the last one where you heard Tom speak? So Tom's my boss. Don't tell him me. Anything I say here today is actually how we do things, and he obviously presented the vision that we kind of started with. I'm going to talk about some teething pains we've had getting there. But yeah, don't get me in trouble. So we started as 15 of us in a basement over in Rathbone Street. My whole career has been orientated around that coffee shop down there. It's very important to me. And I wasn't actually there in the first 15, but I joined shortly after in 2013 when we were trying to gear up to launch our first product, which was the lovely Hive thermostat. It was a plastic white box and looked just like every other thermostat. It was pretty horrible. But we got into our first market in the UK, and it was our first use of the Hive brand, which was quite groundbreaking for someone like British Gas and Centrica. And then we moved on into Ireland as our first country, but very much working with another Centrica-owned business, Bordgosh, and we didn't really have to do much adaptation to the product, so it doesn't really count as our first kind of foray into internationals. And the main thing that happened in kind of 2014 was the acquisition of AlertMe. So at this point, we'd got to about 200 people, and we were trying to really scale things up as we came towards the launch of Hive 2, which is down at the bottom here. That's what I work on. And then we started adding more and more devices to our ecosystem. But we were doing that so quickly that sometimes we hit some stumbling blocks and made some early decisions that maybe like we look back on today and think, oh, okay, maybe we should have done things a bit differently. But those problems kind of started getting more prevalent as we got to moving into North America. So that was like our first kind of, Marissa's cheering at the back there, our token American. But yeah, she's joined us from Texas. And we've then, within the same year, also gone to Italy. So two very different markets, very different products, but also heating seems to go first because it's our hero product. Therefore, we end up doing a lot of the app infrastructure stuff as well within my squad. And I'll talk a bit more about that. So my role is looking after the thermostat globally. So we've gone from this beauty in one country in 2013 to all of these in 2018. So we've increased to 13 different types of products and 5 territories, 5 countries. So it's been a really rapid journey, and we're now about 600 people. So we've scaled number of products, number of countries, and number of people within quite a rapid timescale. So I'm just going to give you 30 seconds on how Hive actually works so that you can kind of understand some of the complexity that we go through. We have our lovely thermostat on the left-hand side that talks to the hub, and it sends messages about what temperature it is and what the heating status is. The hub then sends that up to the platform through your router or your internet connection, and then the platform conveys that back to the app. So that's kind of the little loop, and then the app sends stuff back up to the platform when the user makes a change. Goes back down to the hub, back across to the thermostat. So there's kind of 4 main components of where my role sits. The thermostat has an interface of its own, the hub has to do stuff to pass on messages, so does the platform, and then also the app. And currently we have Android, iOS, and web developers sitting within the squad. So there's a lot of kind of things around consistency that I'm probably going to come back to. But before you go international, I think there's a really few things that we kind of learn along the way that might be useful to share. So don't just be fooled by customer numbers. Obviously, going to North America, it's a huge market. But we needed to be a bit more strategic than that, than just we can get to more customers. Because can you actually get to them? Because what we've relied heavily on here in the UK is having a technician and engineering workforce that can go and install our products, especially for the thermostat. In North America, it's a self-install product, but still having that kind of relationship and having a footprint somewhere to start us off has been really crucial. And luckily, Centrica, our parent company, owns Direct Energy that are based out of Houston. So that made a good kind of connection and route into the market, a way of understanding what the kind of market was like. But we also needed to know our customers, because it's all very well having a product, but unless people want to actually buy it, then there's no point in launching. And your MVP really has to still be viable. So one of the things that we got asked a lot of is like, well, what's this boost thing? It doesn't really mean anything to me. But when we talked to customers, what they said in the UK was the boost was the most important thing to them. So we were quite keen to see if that resonated with North American customers. And actually, we've kind of turned technicians around from being a bit skeptical around, oh, I don't need a button on the top of my thermostat to just turn it on for an hour, to, oh, actually, my wife uses that quite a lot when she's home and she doesn't have the app to hand. So that's really useful to know that when you actually are talking to your customers and solving the right problems, you are able to differentiate in even a crowded market. Also, one of the things that has slightly tripped us up is knowing about regulation and where that can be an opportunity and also a threat. So in the UK, there's new regulation coming in for thermostats next week, which is giving me sleepless nights. But in North America, the regulation is different, and it's different state by state. So it's really important to kind of know where that's an opportunity and where that's going to hit you hard. So, what have been our teething problems? Consistency is a really big thing between the thermostat and the app, between the apps themselves, but also between products. So we have like some of our buttons and call to actions, we have like 13 different types of them across the apps. And that's kind of ridiculous. You want to know, as a user, you want to know exactly what you want to press and how to do that. And as we've grown and we've done things by different product owners and different designers, those kind of little inconsistencies, they've added up to big inconsistencies over time. So one product might not actually look like another product, even though you're doing the same sort of action. For example, if you're turning on your plugs or your lights, it's slightly different to how you would turn on your thermostat. One of the other things is difference in markets. So with North America, we needed to be really careful that we spelt things correctly. It's a really small thing, but it drives customers nuts. So no U's in color and things like that. Cancelled, doesn't have a double L. And even that's still maybe on our thermostat in North America. But also time zones. Like when you go between time zones, it can be really complicated. And what's the source of truth? So for example, some of our hub knows which time zone it's in because of the platform, telling it this is your zip code. But then maybe the app travels between time zones. So which is the source of truth? And keeping that kind of slick and nice experience can be really challenging at times. You want to make sure that things are configurable by region rather than customized, because as soon as you go down the customized route and doing everything bespoke for that region, you've got huge problems with maintainability, and that's something that we're really keen to avoid, that we can kind of plug and play. And as we develop features, we do it for both the UK, Europe, and North America, and try and bring the product feature set up as a whole, which may take slightly longer, but would be better in the long run. Languages is something that we found very difficult when we went to Italy. None of us spoke Italian, so we had to go and find some people that sit in our call center. We have two lovely Hive Hub agents who help us extremely well in what should we call this, what's the word for this, and then will it fit on our screen is a huge constraint for a thermostat. And it sounds daft, but it's like, yeah, you've got to say this in 20 characters. And for Roman languages, that's really tough. So even though I don't speak Italian, I can tell you where it's going to break our interface quite quickly. Also, your account is set up on the platform, and you select a language at the point of signing up. So say your hub is sending you messages about system alerts in English. Your phone could also be set to Spanish, and it would show the app in Spanish, but you're getting your alerts in English. And you run into another kind of consistency problem. That can be kind of triggered a bit because of the person that bought the product is not necessarily the person that's always using the product, and we need to be really conscious of those kind of dynamics, especially within households and families where we operate. And some of those early decisions that you make about where things live are really critical, because now that the platform sends these notifications and that's always in that language, it's now quite difficult to change that. Beta trialing is crucial. Like, we learn so much by doing it, and it's really, really important that we have that capability in each country that we go to. But it also is a huge complexity around making sure that everyone's supported in the right way and that we can understand the feedback that's coming back from them. And then in terms of support, like, it can be really difficult to keep on top of releasing one app to multiple countries, but making sure that the support function has been briefed and knows exactly what's happening in their region can take up quite a bit of time, but it's a huge, huge benefit to making those people feel involved, because they're our front line and they're telling us what our customers are seeing and feeling and hearing. And I do believe that product managers should do customer support as well, so that's something that keeps us honest. So one of the things that, when we started out on our journey to North America, we had kind of multiple product managers and a pool of like devs that ran in a Scrum kind of way. What we've moved to is, turn the whole thing off. That wasn't the plan. I broke it.
Yeah.
I don't know. There we go. Sorry about that. That's embarrassing. We moved to squads, so they were usually made popular by Spotify. But what this has allowed us to do is, usually it's done by device. So we have a device squad, we have a thermostat squad, there's a PO or a product manager, we have dev, we have QA and Scrum Master, BA, sometimes product management, project management even. But hardware is still hard to fit into that kind of structure given its longer lead times. And our back-end hub development is done by a different team as well that's run as a separate kind of squad. So we still need to kind of work together across multiple things, but it's actually simplifying stuff because we've got a bit more autonomy about what's in our backlog, and we can organize around how we want to do things, and each squad is run slightly differently. So the ceremonies that people do are kind of up to them, and that can be quite empowering when you get people on board and you drive that kind of team spirit. We're not dependent on other squads in terms of being able to put things into releases. We are dependent on the hub and the platform, or maybe the hardware in our case, but we're not kind of waiting on a feature or things like that, which is really, really crucial to moving faster. And that was one of the things that we were slow when we were one big pool of resource. So actually breaking us up has made us a lot quicker. And then also, we have a really, really good understanding of what our capacity is now. Because before it was, oh, well, we don't know how long something's going to take, and we'll see where we are at the end of the sprint, and we'll see what we've got left to do. Perhaps our squad, given some of the deadlines are like kind of hard deadlines, especially when you're launching in a country, might work slightly better in Kanban than Scrum. But we are running all the squads in Scrum right now. That's just my opinion. So, but we have a lot of scope change as things develop, especially when we've got like a regulatory deadline that's not moving. How do we meet that regulation as like the very minimum, and then build on that is quite challenging right now. So maybe that Kanban approach would be slightly better for us. It hasn't fixed everything, so there's still a few things. Conflicts. So I was talking a bit about there, but yeah, when we launch in a new country, we generally have a lot of moving parts. So if you have engineer training that you have to complete before you can launch a product, you have to have call center training that people are ready to support the products. You've got to have all these things in place before you can say go. So it's not just about having the app translated by any means, which is sometimes really unagile, if I'm honest, but we do try. So, and then marketing can also be a really hard deadline. So when you've got something going live on the TV and it's not in the product, you really need to ship it, and that can be a lot of pressure. But yeah, hopefully we won't do any more singing elephant ads. But Also, being a global product manager, everyone's requirements are really, really important and the most important thing. And choosing between them can be a real challenge. So it's not always the person that shouts loudest or things like that, but trying to evaluate whether a feature for an existing market like the UK, where we've got a lot of customers, is more important than launching and having potential new customers in a new country can be quite challenging, and how you communicate that back to the business as well. And then MVP versus continuous improvement. So one of the things that we did quite badly maybe at the start was that we'd launch an MVP and we'd never go back to it because the next thing was coming along. So the next product we were trying to get out the door. So with the move to squads, that's helped a lot. But even now, we still have a lot of pressure to deliver. So we've launched 2 new hardware products this year alone and a massive app feature called Actions, which affects all of our products, as well as continuous improvement things along the bottom, just kind of trickling in as we can. So that's helped having the squad approach, but we still need to make sure we do more. So when you're launching in somewhere new, you really need to have that backlog all ready to go so that you can kind of fast follow quickly. And who actually owns the backlog? So while in a squad, it's the product owner or the product manager, sometimes it can shift dependent on the requirements of the business, and we have to stay aligned to the business objectives. So sometimes that can kind of be overruled, which then ends up in scope change and things like that, which can be hard for a squad to adapt to. So it's something that we still need to work on a bit, I think. So what would my takeaways be? Really know your customers before you're expanding to make sure you're actually building the right thing, because otherwise, I'm not really sure I believe in the build it and they will come mentality. I'm more of the find out what people want, make what they want, sell it kind of mentality. Your MVP must be viable. So if you're going into a really competitive market, it needs to have something that differentiates it rather than just being a me too. Using retrospectives to learn from your mistakes. So one of the things that we learned most about going to Italy was that we needed a proper translation process, and we've now implemented a system where it's integrated into our app automatically through our GitHub account, rather than waiting kind of 2 weeks for a load of spreadsheets to come back and then getting a massive headache of trying to put them back into strings. It was just not an efficient process, but at least we learned from it, and we're trying to improve it. And learn from our mistakes, because obviously those kind of mistakes cost money, and I'm assuming that some people work at startups where you don't have Centrica backing you, so we need to kind of make sure that we're learning from our own mistakes, but you don't make them too. So, thanks.